Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Triangle Be Well TV. I'm Howard Jacobson, FUD, and I'm here in the studio in Amnon Nissan's beautiful studio. Hello, Amnon.
Hello, Howard.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. You?
I'm doing well. I don't know if this is too much of a reveal, but you're dressed for spring today.
Yeah. It
Uh,
was too hot to have the flight suit on.
yeah, today's
Yeah, in the summer you'll see me a lot like that.
all right.
Only
Good.
when I go to official business.
All right. Well, you're soaking up the vitamin D. I hope.
I hope
Getting
so.
out in the sun.
Yeah.
So this is a call-in show. I would love to talk to people today. Um, Here's the number, 919-518-9773, or on Skype, Computers 2K Voice. And what we're going to talk about today is a topic that was suggested to me by a friend and client, Joan, who says, one topic that many health experts never touch on is the trials of eating whole food plant-based when you live with someone who eats a traditional American diet. So we talk about how to transition yourself, how to transition your kids, but how do we deal with your spouse or your significant other who will not support you and will not change themselves? Because they really should change for their own health, but they are being intransigent, recalcitrant. What do you do? So this is a great topic of conversation. And of course, the answer will be different for every relationship, for every couple. It depends whether there are kids, whether there aren't kids, how different the two diets are, what the reasoning is. This is a great subject to coach on, but in the absence of that, I'll just talk in general about some thoughts. Uh-oh. Good thing you got me my water. Today's episode is sponsored by water.
Aqua.
Aqua, agua, maim. I'm, I'm blanking on all the other languages that I've ever known. Wasser. I think it's Wasser in German. Good stuff. So we're going to talk about three basic things today, and I'm going to encourage you, if you have this issue, call in, and we can talk about it again in the specifics. But in general, talk about three things. I'm going to talk about the mindset that you want to bring to this issue, bring to the challenge, bring to the problem. And then we're going to talk about the importance of diagnosis, of not just jumping in with, okay, I read a book, here's what it says to do, but really figure out where are the sticking points. What if any doctor who wants to treat a disease will first diagnose and say, what's the cause? Anyone who wants to solve any sort of systemic problem will say, where are the leverage points in that system? What are the feedback loops? So we're going to do a lot of thinking about systems theory today, because everything is systems, right? Your life is a system, and it could be more or less complex, but when there's two people in an equation and each of them has their own motivations, then the system can become much more complex. And there is always a simplicity underneath the complexity, but if you're just focused on the complexity, you won't see it. And you won't know how to intervene, and you're going to end up pushing on the wrong points and very often getting blowback or unintended consequences, where the thing you want it to happen becomes the absolute opposite. So we're going to talk about mindset, then we're going to talk about the importance of diagnosis in a systems way, and then we're going to talk about strategies, about what to do once you've made your diagnosis. What are the tools at our disposal when we want to get our partner's support for our own way of eating, when it's healthier than theirs? Ready? So let's get started. But before we get started, today is I saw this on Facebook. It's Rounded Off Pi Day, right? So 3.14159 is the first bunch of digits of pi. 3.1416 rounded down to 4 decimal places. Today is 3/14/16. So anyone who wants to get a round pi, today's a very good Day to do it. In the face, I get. I didn't make it up. I just saw it. You make it a sweet potato pie. Make it nice and healthy, or lots of fruit. So let's let's jump in. So there's three things I want to say about mindset. The first one is probably the most important. So if you take away nothing else, if you have to jump off and go do something else, this is, I think, the most valuable thing I'm going to say today is that this has to be entirely about you and not about them at all. It sounds selfish, doesn't it? But let's think about locus of control. And I'll invite you to imagine two circles, one inside the other. And the smaller circle is the circle of control. The larger circle is the circle of concern. This comes from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So inside the smaller circle, and the circle of, what did I say? Circle of influence, circle of control, is always smaller than your circle of concern. So I'm concerned about global climate change. I'm concerned about who's going to win the election. I'm concerned about people driving too fast on Route 40. These are things that I have concern over, but very little control. Whereas there are things that I have control over. I can decide whether or not to brush my teeth in the morning. I can decide how fast I drive. Things like that. I can decide. I have control over who I vote for. I have control over whether I create extra carbon emissions or whether I sequester carbon and live a carbon neutral or carbon negative life. So all of these things, I have control over some and no control over others. So we are going to focus on that inner circle, the circle of control. And the question is, what can we control? And the answer is our own behavior, if that. Right? We don't even have total control over our own behavior, as we well know, but we have some control over our behavior, and that's where we have to put our efforts. So what are the elements of our own behavior? We can, to some teeny extent, control our thoughts. We can decide, okay, now I'm going to think about something. Last night I was tossing and turning. I was having trouble falling asleep. It was around midnight. And so I tried a trick, which was, I was having all sorts of, like the midnight thoughts you have when, like, what am I going to do? And how is this going to work? And what have I forgotten? And you just can sort of work yourself up into this existential crisis. And that's where I was. Now, I knew that the reason I could have this existential crisis at midnight is that I was getting ready to fall asleep. So there was this, like, all the other thoughts had left the playing field. The playing field is empty, and now all the mischief thoughts come in. So the solution is not to will myself to say, okay, no, don't have these negative thoughts. Think positive thoughts. Think about how much fun you had in the garden this weekend. Think about what you're going to grow. Think about your beautiful children growing up and doing great things in the world. I didn't have that choice. All I could do was, I'm ready to sleep, I'm tired, and in come all these rascally thoughts making me doubt my own existence, everything I've ever done, every decision I've ever made. It was horrible. So the trick there is to fill your mind with busy thoughts, just to crowd them out. So what I did was I said, I wonder what the 7 times table looks like is there a pattern in it? So I said, 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 is made up of 1 and 4, which is 5. So I've got, right, when you add them up. So then I got 7 and then 5. And then what's the next one? 21. 21 is 2 plus 1 is 3. So now, is that a pattern? 7, 5, 3. Would the next one be 1? 28. 2 plus 8 is 10. 1 plus 0 is 1. There's a pattern there. That's kind of cool. 7, 5, 3, 1. What would the next one be? 35. 3 plus 5 is 8. So then is the next one 6? 42. 4 plus 2 is 6. Wow, this is really cool.
9.
Huh?
9.
9 is what?
Table. Go ahead.
Okay. So so I could keep going, but I was like, wow, that's really cool. And So I can predict this pattern of the 7 times table, what the numbers, what the sums of the products of the 7 times table. And at this point, I wasn't thinking about my misery at all. Now I was thinking, what about 5? 5 is kind of cool too. It's either so 5 or 10, which is 1, or 15, which is 6, or 20, which is 2. So I kind of 5, 1, 6, 2, 7, 3, 8, 4. I never noticed that pattern before either. Then I started going to 8s, and I started getting all these patterns. And the next thing I know, it's the morning, and I'm wide awake.
So you never got the 9?
To the 9 times table?
Yeah.
Well, I knew what the 9 times table
Oh.
does. That wasn't so interesting to me. At least I think I do. But so I didn't have control over all of my thoughts, and I didn't have any control over the feelings that the thoughts engendered, but I was able to have some locus of control and say, I'm going to decide to do mathematics in my head. And since I'm not that good at mathematics, I had to do very, very simple mathematics and just try to remember these patterns. And it was able to, so I had control over that. If I had tried to say, I'm not going to think about these negative thoughts, I would have failed. And I would have tried to put a leverage in a place where I had no leverage. But I knew how the mind works. I knew that the thoughts only come in when there's an empty space. So I filled the void with something that I could fill it with easily, and I was able to relax and end up going to sleep. So what does this have to do with changing your diet? It has to do with it in that you have a locus of control, which is your own behavior, your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own words, your own actions. What my friend and mentor Peter Bregman calls a FAST assessment. How do I feel? How do I act? What do I say? What do I think? That's a good mnemonic right there. That's where you have a measure of control. And if you don't have control over your own behaviors, so if you find yourself reaching into the closet and pulling out things you didn't want to eat, going to the store and buying ice cream, you can't even control your own behavior 100%. How do you think you're going to control someone else's behavior even 0.1%? You're not. So this is the most important mindset thing. This is all about you. It's not about them. You do not concern yourself with how they eat. How they eat is their own decision. And I know that's hard to hear if you have someone that you love and you live with and you're depending on them and you're parenting together, or you're building a life together or a business together, and you see them eating themselves into disability, into disease, into an early grave. It's hard. You really want them to change. And that's what you got to let go of. This is not about them. So again, you can't say, okay, I'm going to stop wanting them to change. That's like saying I'm going to stop my negative thoughts at midnight. Instead, you're going to say, I'm going to choose to focus on me, on my own behavior, on my own food choices, on my own patterns, on my own shopping. And every way that I interact with them is about me, about getting me the help and support that I need so that I can eat the way I want to. So, does that make sense as a basic principle that this is going to be entirely a self-centered operation, entirely selfish? They can eat however they want. It doesn't matter. What matters is the effect of their feelings, actions, words, and thoughts upon you. And when we're talking about them, we don't know what their thoughts are. We don't know what their feelings are. So all we're looking for is their behaviors and their words. Those are the only things that we can say for sure we understand. Everything else is an interpretation, is an assumption. We think we know what people are thinking, but of course we don't. We think we know how they're feeling. We think we know what their intentions are, and we have no idea. John Gottman, a psychologist and researcher who's done a lot of work with relationships, is able to look at very, very small conversations, very short conversations between couples, and to predict with great accuracy whether they're going to stay happily married, whether they're going to be unhappily married, whether they're going to get divorced. And it's largely based on one thing, which is attribution, which is, do you interpret the other person's words and actions in the most generous way possible. Where they said that, do you think they're evil, or they're mean, or they're defensive, or they're angry, or some other more generous, more positive interpretation? Whether you're right or not doesn't matter. But for happy marriages, the positive interpretation is the one that tends to produce the emotional feedback loop that leads to happiness. So, this is all about you, it's not about them. That's the first part of the mindset. The second part of the mindset is that you are in this relationship by choice. So, this is one of those, I get to live with this person, I don't have to live with this person. And this is a really hard thing for most of us around a lot of topics, not just relationships. I get this a lot. I've gotten this a lot when I was coaching people in business about their jobs. And they would say, I've got to go to work. I can't quit my job. I don't like it, but I have to stay. And I would argue with them. I'd say, no, you don't. That's a choice. They say, no, I have to. If I didn't work at this job, I wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't be making money to support my family. I said, there are people who don't support their families. There are people who don't make money. This is a choice. And it takes a long time. It's kind of a philosophical issue that they have to understand. But at some point, once they get it, that they really are making an active choice, that this job they have is better than not having a job. Because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have a job. If they preferred homelessness or poverty or not feeling like they're contributing to the family, they would do it. This is the option that they are choosing. Now, maybe they're saying, I wish I had more options, which is certainly real and valid. But at some level, we have to take ownership over our own choices. And in relationships, too, this is hard for people to hear because they fear that if they open up this box of, I have a choice, that they might feel like, well, in that case, I could leave it. And that's terrifying. Terrifying. So a friend of mine, Mark, told me many, many years ago that he wakes up every morning and asks himself, do I want to stay in my house, in my family, in my relationship with my wife and with my kids? Or do I want to get up and leave? Do I want to move on? Every day he gets up and he decides, no, I'll stay. I think staying is better than leaving. And when I first heard this, I was shocked. So how can you wake up every morning and consider bolting, consider leaving? But then I understood that every day that he stays is a day that he's committed to that relationship. He's like, I'm here out of choice. I'm here because I want to be here. And that makes all the difference in the world, feeling like you have that autonomy, as opposed to, I go to work because I have to pay taxes, because I have to pay for my kids' schooling, because I have to put food on the table, because I have to make the car payments, because I have to pay off my student loans. And at some level, that's all true. But for every one of those things, I can point to people who aren't supporting their families, who aren't paying off their student loans, who aren't putting food on the table. And that's a choice. It's a choice they're making. So you are in this relationship by choice, which means if someone is acting in such a way that is keeping you from doing what you want to do, from being who you want to be, from living the life you want to live, from eating the way you want to eat, from being the sort of person you want to be, that means it's your decision to be with them. And I'm not saying get up and leave. I'm not saying stay either. I'm saying that from an epistemological point of view, from the point of view of knowledge of reality, to acknowledge that this is a choice you have made in the past and you are continuing to make. And the reason that's so important is that you are asking them to change in some way. And if you're asking them to change, now we're getting into negotiation theory. You're asking of something from someone. So in negotiation theory, what leverage do you have? It's called a BATNA. the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. This comes from the Harvard negotiation project stuff from I believe in the 90s, maybe even a little bit earlier. The BATNA is if they don't do what you say if they don't do what you want them to do, what do? If you have no leverage, you say, okay, well, I asked, they said no, nothing I can do. But know that one of your BATNAs might be, if this doesn't get better, I'm leaving the relationship. Or know that that's not your BATNA. Know that your BATNA is, if they don't get better, nothing happens. Or if they don't get better, I'm going to punish them emotionally. Or if they don't get better, I'm going to get revenge in some other way. I'm not passing any judgment here on anyone's relationship strategies. But I'm saying that know what your BATNA is. Know what, if you can't get them to say yes to something, what you can do unilaterally. And for some people, it's a scary thought, but everyone might be better off if you say, this person is not supporting me, is not here for my growth. What am I doing here? Again, not to be prescriptive for anyone, because I have no idea what you should do in your relationship. Most of the time, I have no idea what I should do in my relationship. These are complicated, messy things. But the mindset is important. And for me, once my friend Mark told me that, and I started practicing that every day, I'll tell you what happened is on the good days, I was much more joyful, much more engaged, much more committed. And on the bad days, I was able to say, you know what, this is a bad day, but I'm in it for the long haul. I'm choosing this. I'm committing myself to this. And that made, on the bad days, it made even more difference to say, this sucks, but I'm here by choice. And no relationship is perfect all the time, but I think about the good times and I think about the future and I think about the potential here. And that's why I'm sticking this out today. Tremendously empowering. Yeah, it's like weightlifting. You gotta do it a lot because I don't know. I grew up thinking that relationships were fairly straightforward and easy. Like people didn't share the dark underbelly of what it's like to be in a relationship with someone else. That
It is when you're young.
There's conflict, and conflict is not a bad thing per se, because if two people never conflicted on anything, then one of them would be unnecessary. We're different. We have different desires, different needs, and this thing called relationship is a crucible in which we grow. Imagine if everyone agreed with you about everything all the time. You'd grow up, like some heir to the kingdom. Everyone had to do your bidding all the time. You'd be the most selfish, snotty person in the world. It's conflict that makes us human. So embrace it or don't. But say, I'm in this by choice, and if I'm not in this by choice, I'm going to get out. So again, it's a very, very fundamental mindset to have before you start talking about, am I going to change my behavior? Am I going to ask this other person to support me if I want to eat better? So the third mindset shift is don't jump in, but diagnose. And I have the second section is all about diagnosis, but the mindset is curiosity about what's going on here. Why are we at loggerheads over this? What is causing my partner to resist, to not be helpful, to not be supportive, to not do these things? And so those are the three mindsets you want to have of it's about you, not them. You have a choice and you're in this based on your own free will, and curiosity about what's really going on. So if we start with that, everything else is much, much simpler. And that's why I spend so much time on it, even though it's just 3 simple points. Okay, let's talk about diagnosis. So the simplest form of diagnosis, and I believe I talked about this in a previous episode, is BJ Fogg's behavior model. It's what causes people to do anything? So there's three things. There is motivation. The person has to want to do it, and the motivation could be very, very high or extremely low. The motivation could be positive or negative. The motivation could be I'm doing it because something good will happen, or the motivation could be I'm doing it because if I don't, something bad will happen. Motivation. Second is ability. How easy is it to do this behavior? If I'm very, very motivated to flap my wings and fly, I would love that. I really would. But I don't have the ability, so it's probably not going to happen. And let's divide ability into two different categories. And this, again, comes from my friend and mentor, Peter Bregman of Bregman Partners, the author of 18 Minutes and 4 Seconds, and whatever the name of the book is he's working on now. And Peter, when I started working with Peter in 1999, he had developed a behavior model that included 4 elements, and 3 of them are particularly relevant. So he had motivation, and then he took ability and divided it into 2 separate bits. He talked about knowledge and capability. And it's a useful distinction because sometimes somebody knows what to do, but they simply can't do it. For example, think about any ways in which you are I forget the word, where your left and right are different. So let's say I play tennis. I can serve with my left hand, but I can't serve with my right hand. Or I can write, hand write with my left or not with my right. Or I play guitar and I can finger with the left and pick or pluck or strum with the right. But if you ask me to reverse those things, I couldn't do them. Now, my brain has all the knowledge. I know exactly how to serve. I learned it, but I don't have the capability. So a capability question, this is kind of crass, we may have talked about it, it's the gun to the head. So if I put a gun to your head and said, could you do this? Could you do 100 squats with a gun to your head? Yeah, probably could. If I said, gun to your head to me, could I fly? No, still can't. So then it's a matter of capability, of ability rather than motivation. And within that, do I know what to do? And once I know what to do, can I do it? So a lot of education is based on the knowledge, right? So if I teach you how to do something and I give you theoretical knowledge or book learning, then you can say, okay, I know how to do that. But unless you've tried it and practiced and failed and succeeded and gotten feedback, you may not have the capability. So if I tell you, here's how you cook a meal, and I give you the recipe, how many people have bought cookbooks or gotten recipes off the internet or from the old days, clipped them from the newspaper or a magazine and tried to make it and failed? You had all the information in front of you. They weren't hiding anything. They weren't like, haha, I will leave out the most important ingredient because I don't want you to make it. No, it's all in there. But you may not be able to chop the onion right, or you may not understand how to create a white sauce. So even though you have all the information, you may not have the capability. And that's a really important distinction, especially if you're trying to teach someone else. If I tell you, okay, here's how you do something, and then I think you know how to do it, I'm deluding myself. And that's, of course, in school, that's almost only how we learn, because we then regurgitate facts, we take tests. We seldom put things into practice in real life and get measured on how we're doing. That's the realm of things like sports performance, where somebody, I learned how to run a 2-minute 440. Well, or a 1-minute 440 or a 2-minute 880. Well, I learned how, but I still can't do it. So let's keep practicing until I can do it. I understand how to jump over the hurdle. I understand how to move my legs, but every time I try, I trip and fall on my face, so I can't do it. So understand that ability is comprised of these 2 things, knowledge and capability, and and as part of diagnosis, you want to see which one of those is prevalent, is more active, is the limiting factor. So back to BJ, we've got motivation, we've got ability, and the third one is a trigger. So I could be motivated to meditate. I could have the ability to meditate, But I could spend 6 months not meditating just because I never think like, oh, why don't I meditate now? So there's no trigger. Let's say I don't have a room set up, or I don't have a time where I say, okay, now I'm going to meditate. And I can just go through my life, and with inertia and a lack of attention to it, even with motivation and ability, I simply wouldn't meditate. So those are the three parts which we've broken into four. There's another part which Peter talks about as support. So we're going to get to that in terms of, we understand that we need support, right? We wouldn't be having this conversation if I didn't need help in eating better. If I was doing it perfectly, we wouldn't have to have this conversation. If the conversation was, I would like to brush my teeth twice a day for 2 minutes, morning and night, and I need my spouse's help in order to do that, then I would say, well, what are they doing? Hiding the toothpaste? Are they climbing under the sink and turning off the tap? Why can't you just do that by yourself? Why do you need anyone else's help or support? But with food, it's different. Food we share. Food, there's a strong social component. People take turns cooking and shopping and prepping and storing things. There's shared space for where things go. So we need support. But the question is here for diagnosis, what support does our partner need? So we've got motivation. We break it down. We've got motivation, we've got knowledge, we've got capability, and we've got support. And when we look at why our partner is not doing what we want them to do, what we're asking them to do, what we need them to do in order for us to eat well, we can look at those four things and say, what's missing? So let's take them one at a time. Let's talk about motivation. So with motivation, I would say that the largest problem is, which I will call defensiveness. So if I want you to help me eat better, you might very easily get defensive because you think I'm judging you. And I might have been judging you for a really long time if I see if you're making food choices that I don't approve of. So we go out to dinner and we go to a buffet and you come back and your plate is loaded with cake and fried chicken. And I have not done a ton of work on myself, emotional work, psychological, spiritual work. I would look at that, and even if I don't say anything, and I try to have a very, very neutral face, aren't I giving off all sorts of disapproval vibes? Can't you pick up on that, even if someone doesn't say something? It's a very, very easy thing to pick up on if someone is judging you, disapproving of you. And most of us in relationships, we don't learn how to not do that. And we bring all our judgments and everything that we don't like about ourselves and everything that we're scared of in our own inner shadows of our psyche, we project that outward on other people and we hate it there. So whatever I am worried about, whatever I'm ashamed of, I will look for it somewhere in the world and I will really hate it out there. And even if I can keep my mouth shut, I will be sending all these vibes. So if I have trouble sticking to a diet, if I have trouble not sneaking food, somebody else sneaking food will drive me up a wall, because it will, when I see it out there, it's like a sympathetic harmonic, like it'll like ringing a bell that triggers the same vibrations within me, and I want to shut that down. And I can't look inside because I don't want to, because I'm blind to it. So I will look outside and really hate it there. So if that's one of the biggest issues that our partners face, is that they feel judged, and they might feel judged because we're actually judging them, or they might be projecting their own self-judgment onto us, right? Do you ever like know someone who like walks outside and they're just walking down the street and they go, everyone thinks I'm fat. Look at they all think I'm disgusting. We don't know those people. And again, remember, we can't know what people are thinking or feeling. We can only know what they're saying and doing. And people are just walking, doing their own business, probably not paying attention to us at all. But if we have that self-image, we will project it onto other people and see ourselves through their eyes the way we see ourselves. So there's a lot of reasons for people to be defensive. And most of us have been wounded. Most of us have had nasty things said about us. Most of us have been told that we don't measure up in some way or another, that we're not worthy in some fashion, that we need to work harder, do more, be more. And we have an entire advertising industry in this country built on you are not good enough unless you buy X. So all of us have this in us, this energy of feeling judged, whether it actually comes from the outside, whether it comes from our partner, whether it comes from ourself, whether it comes from the voices from our past that are still stuck in our heads, from parents or teachers or clergy or authority figures or siblings or classmates, wherever that comes from, that feeling of being judged is a really, really powerful thing. So when we go into the third part of our talk now, strategies, that's the first thing we have to deal with. So I want to talk about a study when we're talking about defensiveness. And this comes to me from a friend, Vlad Chituk, who is a researcher at the Duke University Center for Advanced Hindsight. I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago for my Plant Yourself podcast, which you can listen to at plantyourself.com and on iTunes and Stitcher. And I haven't published it yet, but he shared the work of a researcher from Stanford named Benoit Monin, M-O-N-I-N, and Benoit is pronounced B-E-N-O-I-T. So if you are phonetic, you'll want to look for Benoit Monin, Benoit Monin. And he did work with people's response to what he termed moral rebels. And this is fascinating research. So there's basically two different test conditions. So imagine you walk into the lab, and let's say we clone you. So there's two of you. So you, number one, walks into the lab, and you're asked to do some sort of psychological study, and you are asked to do something that's kind of mildly racist. And you're at Stanford University, and so you're very, very sensitive to this sort of thing. And you do the thing because the person is, they're paying you for the experiment, and you went all this way, and you figure, well, it's not me, it's them, and no big deal. And right after that, someone else comes in and is asked exactly like you were to do the mildly racist thing, and they take a stand and they say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's offensive. I am not interested in doing that, and that's wrong, and I'm not going to do it. I refuse. So that's condition one. Condition two is you walk in, and before you are asked to do the mildly racist thing, they ask this other person who's ahead of you. And this other person says, no way, I'm not doing that. That's offensive. I refuse. Do you understand the two conditions? One is you are asked to do the mildly racist thing before you see someone say no, to be a moral rebel, or you are shown the moral rebel before you are asked to do the thing. And here's what they found. They found that people, people are asked, like, do you want to do the thing? Do you want to do the mildly racist thing? And they found that people who were exposed to another moral rebel said no much more often. When they had the example of someone else saying, no, I don't want to do that, then I say, yeah, I agree with them. I don't want to do that. Whereas almost everyone beforehand, before they saw the moral rebel, did the mildly offensive behavior. That's interesting, but what's more interesting is the researchers asked in a very casual way, what do you think of that guy? If you saw that person rebel first, before you had a chance to commit to that action, you'd say, they're really cool. I agree with them. I think they're very brave. However, if you see them do that thing after you've already committed, after you've already done the thing that they are against, then you say things like, they're a jerk. They're an a-hole. They're interfering with science. What's the big deal? You're going to judge them negatively for being a moral rebel once you've already committed to the action that they're rebelling against. Isn't that cool?
Even though you agree with what
even though you agree with them, you now feel judged by their rebellion. You feel judged by the fact that they have now shown you up. So you're defensive and you say, oh, what a jerk. Whereas before, when you haven't committed, you see them and you see them as something commendable. And that is really, really important to this discussion. Somebody calling in? No? That's just me? Because the way you approach your partner, somebody on Blab. Okay, so let's see what happens. They're gone.
They're not.
I chased them away. Come back. Okay, so here's why this is so important. If you are improving your own diet, and you say, for whatever reason, so there's lots of reasons to improve your diet. I want to be healthier. I want to look better. I want to live longer. I want to feel better. I want to have more energy. I want to accomplish things that I was not able to accomplish or wasn't able to accomplish as much or as well or as easily, right? So there's sort of, we'll call them self-interested reasons. And there are also what we'll call larger reasons. So let's say ethics, like I'm going to improve my diet because I don't want animals to suffer. I'm going to stop eating animals, or I'm going to stop eating factory farmed animals, or I'm going to stop eating eggs from caged chickens, or milk from factory farmed dairy cows, because I don't want the animals to suffer. Or you could say, I'm doing it because I want to have a positive impact on the environment. Or you can say, I'm going to change the way I eat because I don't want to buy food that causes humans to suffer, that increases poverty, that is produced under conditions of social injustice. So these are all reasons that someone might say they want to improve their diet. And all of them, every single one of those reasons, makes us a better person. If it's selfish, if it's self-centered, if I just want to be healthier, if I'm getting healthier and you're not, and Doug Lisle, a psychologist and at True North Health Center and the co-author of The Pleasure Trap, talks about this a lot in his talks on how to get along without going along. And he makes the point that one of the most important currencies of human existence is status. So I think he overstates it. I think there's many other important things besides status. I think affiliation can be equally important, if not more important. I think achievement can be equally, if not more important, but status is definitely in there. And sort of the more sort of the less evolved we are, the more status becomes important. And we don't just evolve in one direction, right? I can be highly evolved right now, but tonight I could be very uninvolved. I could be hijacked by my my limbic system and just go into fight or flight and just be a total reptile in my emotional palette, in my bag of psychological tricks. I could just be like fight, flee, freeze, as opposed to empathy, understanding, strategy. Right. So when I say evolved, I'm not speaking in an absolute term, but where we are at that moment in terms of our ability to be human. So when we are less evolved, status becomes more important. So if you think about status in the animal kingdom, the alpha typically gets priority access to scarce and important resources. And so in our human society, we still care a lot about status. That's why we judge people by the car they drive, the clothes they wear, the amount of space they take up, right? Someone who takes up a lot of space tends to project symbols of images of higher status than someone who's more turtled in, more hunched over, taking up less space. People who are stand above others tend to be higher status than people who crouch down. And so it's some part of our psyche, we are concerned with status. And when we see someone else, some part of us is wondering, who's higher status, me or them? And once we know our status, then like dogs in a pack or other animals that live in groups, we live with it and we deal with it. But when somebody wants to challenge our status by leapfrogging over us, then we get all our hackles up. And one way to challenge someone's status is to suddenly try to be better than them. So if we're in a committed relationship, if we're married or partners living together, or even just, dating or just friends, and all of a sudden, and we've been, eating cheeseburgers and going out and drinking and smoking and living it up and living very hedonically. And all of a sudden, I say, I really want to clean up my act. I want to be healthy. I want to stop all these bad habits. I want to stop the smoking and drinking. I want to cut down on the cheeseburgers. I want to eat healthier food. We would think the other person who loves us would say, oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. But instead, we have just leapfrogged over them in status. We say, I want to be better than you. That's how they interpret it. And they will do everything in their power, if that's where they're at, to fight that shift, their downgrading of their status. And one way they'll do it is by trying to fight us and say, no, you don't want to do that. Come on, this is how we have fun. Don't worry. Don't listen to those people. They don't know anything. Every day you read a different study. You're going to be bored. You're going to be miserable. You might live longer, but maybe it'll just seem longer, right? And one of the things they say to people when you become whole food plant-based or vegetarian or vegan, they'll say, where do you get your protein? And as Doug Lisle points out, when they say, where do you get your protein, is not, where do you get your protein? I'm truly interested. But they say, where do you get your protein? As in, I know something you don't. You think you're smarter than me and better than me, but I've got an ace in the hole. You're not going to get enough protein. You're going to shrivel up, desiccate, and die, you puny weakling. Which is what they mean when they say, where do you get your protein? Most of the time. So, if that's true of your partner, then what the main strategy you need to do is to undefensicize them. That's a new word. It came into being about 2 seconds ago. You have to make them not so defensive. How do you do that? The most important thing to do is, as Doug Lisle says, to lower your own status. Do it voluntarily, do it consciously. So for example, instead of, I am going to start eating better now because I read this book and I read this website, I saw this website, or I watched Triangle Be Well TV or another of the fine shows on NissanCommunications.com, and I'm going to improve myself and I'm going to get better. Now, if your partner is already there and they're like, oh, I've been waiting for 10 years for you to say that, that's fantastic, then again, we're not having this conversation. But if you're the one who's making the move and they're somewhere else and they are feeling threatened, you have to do it from a position of humility. You can say, I'm kind of worried about something and I need your help. I'm concerned about my health. I feel like I'm not doing well. Or I went to the doctor and I got my tests back and they weren't good and I'm scared. So all of a sudden now you're putting them in a position of the need to reassure you, to make you okay. They are now the caretaker. Anyone who's a caretaker has higher status. So instead of you saying, I'm going to go change and become fantastic and you're going to help me, you start from, I'm low and I need to improve. I need your help. When you ask someone else for help, you have automatically shifted your status lower than theirs. That's why in How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie suggests one of the best ways you can make someone your friend is to ask them for a favor. And it's kind of weird. Like you think, well, if I want to make someone else my friend, I should do something nice for them. But if you do that, you run the risk of putting them in your debt, and then they resent you because now they are lower than you. They owe you something. So if you go and say, hey, can I borrow a book of yours? Then all of a sudden they've done something nice for you, and they are higher status than you are. It's a very, very profound understanding. So you say, I'm scared, I'm worried, I read something, I heard something, I saw the doctor, and I need to clean up my act. I need to change, and I need your help. I started thinking about it, and I realized I don't think I can do it on my own. Or it would be really hard for me to do it on my own. Will you help me? And just starting from there is hugely important, because if someone came to you and said, I'm in a low place and I need your help, you don't feel defensive at that point. You're not thinking about, but what about my cheeseburger? You're not thinking about, but you immediately reach out. Yeah, I'll help. What do you need? What do you need from me? How can I help you? Because partly that plays into people's goodness and their empathy, but it also plays into that little part of the brain that says, who's higher status here? Is my status being threatened, or is my status being reinforced? It's great water. So you make them the hero. You make them the rescuer. You make yourself the one needing to be rescued. And at that point, people will go to great lengths to help you, to prove that they can help you, to prove that they are strong and powerful, have agency, that they care about you. And now we can start having the conversation about, well, what to do. So the way we usually think about marketing, and this is how I thought about it for a long time, was I have to figure out what's in it for them. Like, why does my partner, my spouse, why does my wife want me to be healthy? What's in it for her if I'm healthy? Well, there's lots of things, right? I can be, if I'm healthier, I'm happier. I'm able to make her happy. I'm in a better mood. If I'm not constantly crashing on junk food, or if I'm not overly exhausted, I can help out more. I can be a better partner. I can be a better romantic partner. I can be better with the kids. I can make more money. There's a zillion reasons why rationally she should want me to be as healthy as possible, and she should do everything in her power to cook good food, make salads, prepare things that I can take with me. Like, rationally, it's in her self-interest.
And they always want you to die first. No, second.
Yeah.
They want to die first.
Yeah. Right. No one wants to be the one left standing.
So be healthy.
But that is all undermined if the other person feels judged, feels defensive, and feels like there's a status attack going on. And that's why, so when you think about what's in it for me, that has to come second after you neutralize their fear. Because the other fear, so there's status, but another huge motivator that I mentioned briefly is affiliation, which can be friendship, connection, love. So that can get attacked too. What if the person changes, and I'm used to going out, we go to Outback Steakhouse every Friday night, and now are they not going to want to go to Outback Steakhouse anymore? That's where we go. Are they not going to want to go dancing and drinking at the bars anymore? Is this going to threaten our relationship? So it's not just status, but also relationship that gets threatened. So we have to work on that with them and say, well, here, we can still go out to Outback Steakhouse. I'm not going to order the Bloomin' Onion anymore, but they have a pretty good salad bar, and I can get this and this and this, and I can get the vegetables, so we can still have fun. We can still go out together. And so you're looking for, like, before you get into what's in it for them, you have to think about, what are they afraid of losing? A lot of studies show that we are much more motivated by fear of loss than opportunity for gain. So if we don't deal with that fear of loss first, we're not going to get anywhere. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at affiliation. We're going to look at status. While we're at it, let's look at achievement. So the other person is pretty good at their life, right? Whatever you've been practicing, you're good at. it might not be things you want to be good at, right? If you practice violin a lot, you'll be good at violin, or you'll be good at playing the violin the way you practice. Like someone who practices terribly can probably play terribly, right? If I'm good at driving poorly, if I practice driving poorly, I will drive poorly. If I practice arguing with my spouse and my kids, I will be very good at arguing with my spouse and my kids. I'm very good at being myself, right? I'm an expert at being myself, and it's because I'm always doing it. So your partner is an expert at feeding themselves the way they feed themselves. If they're feeding you, they're an expert at feeding you the way they feed you. They're an expert at shopping. They will shop the way they shop because they're good at it. They might be buying crap. They might be buying expensive stuff. They might be buying quiche that has green mold all over it. But whatever it is, that they're good at it. And so whatever you want to change, whatever improvement they could make, means they're going to be bad at it for a while. Anything you want to do better means you have to undergo what Seth Godin calls a dip, a period of incompetence. You have to go from unconscious competence to conscious incompetence. You're going to learn how to cook new things. You're going to have to be bad at it for a while. All of a sudden, all right, I'm not going to make mashed potatoes and steak. I'm going to cook a tofu cutlet with broccoli and brown rice. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to cut a broccoli. Right, so all of a sudden, they're bad at it. So again, now they're being attacked not just on status, but on affiliation and on achievement. So these are all areas in which we have to reassure them and raise up their status. You're really good at cooking breakfast for me. I love, the way you make omelets is fantastic. I wonder if you could teach me if I want to replace the egg with a block of tofu and make like a scrambled tofu. Do you think you could help me do that? Because you're really good at it. You know when to cook and when to not. And it'll be different, but you have more of a sense of cooking than I do. However you can figure out how to truthfully raise their status, they will be much more likely to want to help, to jump in, and to use all of their considerable skills, knowledge, behaviors, attitudes to support you, as opposed to fighting you or trying to get back to a status quo. So that is motivation. If they're motivated and they're having trouble doing it, then we can talk about things like motivational interviewing and discovering what, just like we do it for ourselves, what would make them more likely to help, more able to help. But once we get the negatives out of the way, motivation tends to take care of itself. It's because we are much more motivated to change for other people than we are for ourselves. So if you think about, I'm going to change for my own health, it's more powerful to say, I'm going to change because my kids deserve a healthy dad. Or I'm going to change because I see myself as someone who cares about the environment. If there are other things that you care about outside of yourself, the change tends to be more systemic and it tends to be more powerful. So once we eliminate the other person's negatives and fears and defensiveness, often the thing just solves itself. Now they want to jump in and help. And now we can talk about specific strategies, like now understanding, well, is it a question of capability? Is it a question of knowledge? Well, yeah, they want to help, but I don't know what to shop. I don't know what to buy. So now, instead of you becoming the expert and saying, well, I can tell you exactly, now you say, well, can we figure it out together? Here's a book. I started looking at it. Maybe you could find something in there to help. So let them become the expert. Let them have the higher status whenever possible, instead of you going, here's what I want you to buy. Here's the shopping list. See, ask them, would it be helpful if I put together the shopping list for you? Because there's people who are good at lists, people who are bad at lists. I was just talking to a friend saying, well, he wants to eat better, and or his wife wants him to eat better, but he would like to. He has no objection to it, but he wasn't sure like how to go about it, how to ask her to help. He said, well, what if we do like we'll sit down on Sunday and make a list. and we'll list out every meal we're going to have, and we're going to put together shopping lists and a schedule, and then I'll go do the shopping. And he's like really on board here. I'll go and I'll do the shopping, and I'll set it up, and I'll do the cooking. Just just let's sit down and do that list. And his wife was like, I'm not good at that. Like, that's the way you think in terms of spreadsheets. I don't even know what I want for dinner tonight, let alone next Thursday. So you have to figure out what are people's abilities, where can they add to it, where can they not, and where do you need some external sort of help, support. If we're both into it, but neither of us has time, if we have the money, can we hire someone to do some cooking once a week and freeze things that we defrost, put labels on them? Can we order out from a restaurant that'll cook healthy food for us? Can we bring in a home chef? Can we make simple things? So then at that point, once you're both on board and you're both working, then we're talking about very, very tactical issues of what do we cook? Things like if the other person doesn't want to change, I'm totally behind you doing it, but I'm happy with my steak and mashed potatoes and fried chicken, so I'll help you. So then how can we figure out how to cook for two people in a way that doesn't take up twice the effort? Can we have things that we have together? Can we think about a salad bar? Two people can go to the same salad bar. One of them can get the macaroni salad and the other one can get the spinach salad. So can we create systems whereby both parties are being served? But once you get the motivation under control, once you understand the mindset, and once the other person is on board and wants to help, everything else becomes trivial. Everything else becomes very, very solvable. And it's easy to get feedback and learn along the way. But it's the problem people have is not at this point. The problem people have is when they're butting heads, when there's constant resistance, constant resentment, and constant backsliding and tension. And that's what this talk has been about how to figure out how to get rid of that. And you may not be able to. This is not a solution for every marriage, for every partnership, for every relationship. As we said at the beginning, you have to decide, am I in this? Am I not? You have to decide, am I committed to it? Am I not? And you have to decide, is the relationship worth the change or is it not? But in most cases, getting rid of the defensiveness, getting rid of the fears of loss of status, loss of affiliation, and loss of achievement can go a long way towards creating a harmonious home. And you know what? I just mentioned, I said the word harmonic accidentally, but when you start eating better and the other person is not feeling defensive about it, if they feel like they're helping you, then you can improve, then your improvement will naturally lead them to improve their own diet. It becomes a law of attraction that if they've helped you, then they're naturally going to be more willing to try it themselves when they see all the good things that come of it for you. So I hope that was helpful, Joan, and anyone else who is listening and wondering about this. What do I want to say in closing? So I want to wish everybody a happy spring in the Northern Hemisphere. It's coming up by next week. It will be, I think, the first day of spring or thereabouts. If you would like help in changing your own health status and becoming well, check out trianglebewell.com. You can email me, howard@trianglebewell.com. We can talk about your situation. And again, as I said, these are general thoughts, but they apply specifically and differently in every case. If you are looking to get off the medical mill and adopt a healthy lifestyle, these are the types of issues that block people, that keep people stuck, even if they're motivated, even if they know what to do. But if they don't get the mindset and the psychology right, they can end up very, very frustrated. And that's what I'm here to help you with. So if you would like to be well, check out trianglebewell.com. You can download the GPS healthcare report and understand how to navigate the medical system, because the medical system will not help you with this. The medical system will not encourage you, in most cases, to improve your lifestyle, to deal with the root causes of whatever is ailing you. So, Amnon, thank you so much for the water, for the
Thank you.
for the support, for the affiliation, and for allowing me to put another Triangle Be Well achievement, another hour plus of staring at a little webcam and talking. And as always, be well, my friends.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Help Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.